What can a Century 21 agent do for you? They explain the market, love a good barbie and never drink milk from the carton. They do your homework, your legwork and sometimes yard work. So invite one over. Century 21 agents. Smarter, bolder, faster.
Welcome back to Your Property Empire. Well, joining us on the show tonight is Andrew Reckman from realestate.com.au. We've also just been joined by Charles Tarbey, the chairman and owner of Century 21 Australasia. Andrew, great to have you. And Charles, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much, Dan. Good to see you again.
Now, we were speaking earlier with Tom Panos at News Corp about some of the trends that he's been identifying and watching. What's happening, I guess, in property over the summer? What do you find? What do you find, I guess, some of the key trends that you see, particularly in those summer periods?
Look, it has been a seasonal industry for a very, very long time. And so you'll expect most people to come out because the weather's better and most people, when it's raining, they don't want to come out and so on. But that's sort of all changed. It really has been very different. Our clearance rates in winter have been higher than what they have been in spring and summer so far.
Is that right?
Yes. So it's we could see that if you look at all the seasons, they seem to be disappearing because it was about supply and demand. And you would have noticed in your business that the lack of supply means lack of properties advertised, lack of revenue, whereas now you come into a slightly different market where it's the listings are increasing on a weekly basis, have been for quite a few weeks now. So it means that there's more activity going on in that area, but the buyer demand is not quite as strong as it was in comparison to the number of properties coming on the market. So our spring and summer have been quieter than what winter was, if you look at the statistics and look at the clearance rates for auction.
It's really fascinating as well, particularly as we approach Christmas in Australia and around the world. How does Christmas impact buying and selling activity?
It's a wonderful time to get out and buy and sell property because I think Tom might have said there's a lot less competition out there, and he's right. Some people think, oh, look, I won't bother now, but there's a lot of activity that still occurs. I know when I worked in my own offices in the early days, I'd always go there over the festive season just to catch up paperwork. I'd leave the door slightly ajar, and invariably somebody would walk in all of the time, having seen something in the window, they want to talk, they want to look at property. A lot of people are being transferred at that time. A lot of people are looking at where they're going to move to for their children for schools and so on. So it's actually a real big time of change, Christmas. So there are a lot more people out there than people think.
So you actually find that people don't avoid buying or selling a house just because it's Christmas?
Yeah, look, I think Christmas is an interesting time for campaigns to start. Properties present really well in summer as well. So you know, people have more time, they're more relaxed, and so they can perhaps look for a new property. And as I said, there's a lot of people looking to move. However, it's probably not a great time to be closing necessarily with people distracted with the holidays, but it's a great time to start a campaign. And as Charles said, there's a lot of activity over Christmas.
It is a great time because of the weather, but you know, with what we've just gone through, it has been seriously affected by a supply issue. That's been what's been driving the marketplace mostly across Australia, and because of that, nobody really cared whether it was raining or snowing. If there was an auction, and they were going to be there, and so it did impact and change the figures around. But this time of the year is a great time to get out and about. A lot of people do that.
And a lot of people do on weekends out and about at auctions and whatnot. Charles, can I ask you as well, something that I asked Tom just a short time ago.
I should have been listening.
Is there a bad time to list a property, or is there ever a bad time to buy a property? He, of course, said absolutely not.
Look, and that's what every real estate agent will tell you, and probably the best answer is that it's always a good time to sell, and always a good time to buy, but there are better good times than others, and that's really what you've got to focus on. And it comes down to circumstances. If you're selling and buying in the same marketplace, you're generally okay. Whether the market's at the top and you're selling and buying at the same time, you're okay. But when you're selling and you're not buying in a rising market, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. So in those circumstances, there are times that you shouldn't be selling. Unless you're prepared or you have something ready to buy. So definitely, it's always a good time to buy and sell, but the circumstances change for each individual.
We'll go into some detail about what's happening in the property market around Australia in just a moment, but I wanted to ask you about something that I'm sure you get asked about a lot, and to you, Andrew, as well. There's so much talk out there right now about how markets are cooling, prices are flattening out, and the end of the boom, I guess you could say, in property is over. Is that right, Andrew?
Yeah, look, I don't think that the boom is necessarily over, and as we said earlier, it really does vary from one part of the country to another, and sometimes, as we saw in WA, it can vary from one suburb to another as well. What we're seeing is year-on-year listings are going up, and as Charles said, that's a healthy sign that more properties are coming onto the market. Traffic from buyers is also very high, perhaps not quite as high as it was a year ago. And in the eastern states, particularly New South Wales and Victoria, it's very strong market still. Even though clearance rates have come down a little bit in the last couple of months, we're at historically high clearance rates and to some extent historically high prices. So a strong market there. In West Australia, you'd have to say that the market has come off, but it does, as always, present a great buying opportunity as well.
Are your agents worried at all, Charles?
I think they're learning to come to terms with the changes. So most of our training and direction to the agents is about marketplaces that are not booms. And a boom is an incredible disruption to most industries. So anybody that joined the real estate industry in the last 3 years has not been in real estate. And they're going to find out what it's like to be in real estate now. I think that the marketplace has changed considerably. You've got a higher interest rate movement being questioned at the moment out there. You've got higher supply coming in, a lower demand in terms of the buyer numbers turning up at these auctions and so on. So those things have to factor in at some point in time. But again, the boom was called by the press. It was called off by the press 3 or 4 months ago, if you remember. So, and we're still moving along.
There you go. All right, well, let's go into some detail about what's happening out there at the moment. I know there was a pretty interesting auction clearance read out of Sydney just this past weekend.
Yeah,
is that right? What are you seeing in terms of national auction?
The national clearance rate was 60.8%. Now that's a low figure because this time last year it was 65.7. So we're actually dipped over this time last year, which is another indication that things have gotten a little cooler, but not in all marketplaces. And we're saying there's certain parts, even in Perth, you've got different suburbs that are performing. It's really a very interesting place. The best marketplace was always Sydney. Well, it wasn't that great this week. It was 59.3% clearance rate. That's dipped below 60, hasn't done that in a long time. And Melbourne was only 64.7. The leading capital city this week was Adelaide at 66.7%. Canberra was the winner for the last 2 weeks in a row. Melbourne creeped in and out of there. So it has been a very interesting time with clearance rates.
What are you seeing with regards to homes advertised for sale?
Yeah, they're increasing. They've increased now 6 weeks in a row. They've climbed only modestly this week at 0.83% over the last few weeks. And this happened in New Zealand as well. Their marketplace also increased by 0.8%, mostly in Auckland where they needed the stock. So there's a lot more coming in. And again, it gives buyers a choice. It gives them an opportunity to negotiate a transaction rather than feel the pressure of having to make a decision and then regretting it later on. So I like this sort of marketplace where agents, buyers and sellers have to sit around a table and work something out.
On the rental side of things, you're also watching residential
increasing
rent price
fantastically now, above what it was at the start of the year. So Sydney was 0.14% increase, and that's had an increase for the last 4 weeks in a row. Brisbane actually had an increase of 0.22%. It's great to see that. But Melbourne had a negative growth of negative rental return of 0.21%. So overall, over all of the Australian region, we had a 0.24% increase for the last week. So that's given us a 0.72% since the start of the year. So the rents were actually declining. Now they've risen. So it's great to see that. And it's going to keep climbing because people can't afford to buy in some areas now, so they're having to rent. So there'll be a bit more pressure on the rental market in parts of Australia.
What about the residential vacancy rate?
Yeah, well, they're very strong. I think they're quite good. Sydney's 2.48% has been really in a good spot for a long time. Melbourne's floated between 3 and 4, plus it's 4.08% this week just gone. Perth was way up there over 7s. It's come back to 0.6606, and that's giving us a 4.39 average over those 3 capital cities. So it's been sitting in those 4s for a while, and you look at the chart, you can see it started to level out very nicely. That's a good factor.
Guys, unfortunately, we are out of time, but I really appreciate your insights. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. And Charles, it's great to have you as always.
Thank you very much.
That does wrap up your property empire. I'm Dan Murphy. From the team here, good night.
The information featured in this program is general in nature and therefore should not be relied upon. Guests appearing on the program may have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment, insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.